I never thought the person who was supposed to be my family, my own sister, would be the one to make me feel like I didn't belong in my own home. It started small. Snide remarks, rolled eyes, little digs at my existence. I thought she was just being moody, that maybe I had done something to annoy her. But I was wrong. It wasn't just a phase. She truly believed I was a burden, and she made sure I knew it. One evening, I came home from school, tired and ready to collapse onto my bed, only to find my things dumped outside my room. My clothes, books, even my childhood stuffed animals, all thrown out like trash. My sister stood in the doorway, arms crossed, smirking. "You don't deserve this room," she said coldly. "You don't deserve anything." I laughed, thinking it was some cruel joke, but when I tried to step inside, she shoved me back. "Mom and Dad said it's mine now," she added, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "You can take the storage room in the basement. It suits you better." I looked at her, searching for a hint of guilt, some sign that she didn't really mean it. But there was nothing, just pure, smug triumph. My parents stood behind her, silent. No defense, no argument, just quiet acceptance, as if they had already decided my place in this house was beneath hers. That was the moment I realized I was completely alone. I stood there, frozen, waiting for someone to say something, anything, to tell me this wasn't real. But my parents avoided my eyes, their silence heavier than any words they could have spoken. My sister, on the other hand, looked victorious, like she had won some battle I didn't even know we were fighting. I wanted to argue, to ask why, to demand an explanation. But deep down, I already knew the answer. She had always been their favorite, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. And me? I was just there, a shadow in my own home. Still, I refused to move. "This is my room," I said, my voice shaking. "You can't just take it." She tilted her head, almost amused. "Oh, but I already did." She leaned closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. "And the best part? No one cares enough to stop me." My heart pounded in my chest as I looked at my parents one last time, hoping for some kind of defense. My mom shifted uncomfortably while my dad cleared his throat. "It's for the best," he muttered. "Your sister needs more space." That was it. No discussion, no fairness, just a decision made without me, like my presence didn't even matter. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but something inside me broke in that moment. If they didn't care, why should I? Without another word, I grabbed my things and walked away. The basement was cold, damp, and smelled like dust and forgotten things. It wasn't a bedroom. It wasn't even meant to be lived in. There was an old couch pushed against the wall, a flickering light bulb barely hanging on to life, and a tiny window that let in just enough light to remind me how much I had lost. I set my things down, my hands trembling. This wasn't just about a room. It was about everything. It was about how little I mattered to them. Upstairs, I could hear my sister laughing, probably throwing her things around in what used to be my space, making it hers. I clenched my fists, anger bubbling beneath the hurt. Why was she like this? What had I done to deserve this? Days passed and the gap between me and my family grew wider. Dinner became a quiet, unbearable affair. My parents barely looked at me, as if acknowledging me was too much effort. My sister, on the other hand, thrived in their attention. She spoke louder, laughed harder, took up more space, like she wanted to erase me completely. At school, things weren't any better. My mind was never fully there. I walked through the halls like a ghost, invisible, unnoticed. And my sister? She carried herself with a confidence I could never understand. People flocked to her. She was the one who had everything. And me? I had nothing. But deep inside, something told me this wasn't over yet. The days turned into weeks, and the resentment inside me grew like a fire that refused to die. My sister walked around the house like she had won, like she had proven something. She threw parties in my old room, filled it with her things, her friends, her laughter, like I had never even existed there. And my parents? They never once checked on me. Not once did they ask how I was doing in the basement, if I was okay, if I needed anything. I stopped trying to be noticed. I stopped speaking at the dinner table. I became a stranger in my own home, and no one cared. But the silence didn't mean I had given up. It meant I was watching, waiting. And then one night, something happened that changed everything. I was lying on the old couch, staring at the ceiling, when I heard voices upstairs. My sister's voice, loud, panicked, my parents whispering urgently. Something was wrong. I sat up, listening closely. "No, this can't happen." My sister's voice trembled, no longer filled with the arrogance she always carried. "Fix it, Dad. Do something." I heard footsteps pacing, drawers opening, the sound of frustration thick in the air. My mother was crying. My father kept muttering under his breath. And then I heard it, one sentence that sent a chill down my spine. "We're losing everything." I sat there frozen. For the first time in my life, my sister was afraid, and I had no idea why. I pressed myself against the basement wall, listening as my sister's panicked voice grew sharper. "This isn't fair! You promised me everything!" she cried. My father's voice was low, tense. "I can't change what's happening. The money's gone. The house, it won't be ours for much longer." My stomach twisted. The house? Were we losing it? I could hear my mother's muffled sobs, the weight of reality crashing down on them. But it was my sister's reaction that kept me frozen in place. She wasn't just scared, she was furious. "This is your fault," she screamed. "You let this happen." I had never heard her sound so desperate, so helpless. The girl who had taken everything from me, who had thrived while I faded into the background, was now breaking apart. For the first time in years, she wasn't the one with power. I stepped closer to the stairs, my heart pounding. Should I go up there? Should I let them know I was listening? A part of me wanted to see their faces, to watch as the world they had built without me collapsed. But another part of me hesitated, because if we really were losing everything, where would that leave me? I finally stepped out of the basement and into the dimly lit hallway. My family was huddled in the living room, my mother wiping her tears, my father rubbing his temples, and my sister pacing like a caged animal. They didn't even notice me at first. "We have no choice," my father said, his voice strained. "The debts are too high. We have to leave." My sister spun around, her face pale with disbelief. "No, that's not happening. This house is mine. My room is mine. You said we'd always have money." Her voice cracked, and for the first time I saw real fear in her eyes. I leaned against the doorway, watching them scramble for answers, for someone to blame. It was strange, how quickly power could shift, how the people who once looked untouchable could fall apart so easily. Then my father looked at me. For the first time in weeks, he really saw me. And then the words came, slow, heavy. "We need your help." I almost laughed. After everything? Now they needed me? But before I could speak, my sister stepped forward, her voice quiet but sharp. "No," she whispered. "He's nothing but a curse." That was it. That was the moment I knew. No matter what happened next, I wasn't part of this family anymore. And for the first time, I was okay with that. Because maybe losing everything wasn't my loss. It was theirs. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Even now, when everything was crumbling, she still held on to her pride, still believed I was beneath her. But for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel the need to fight for a place in a family that had already decided I wasn't enough. I took a deep breath and stepped back. "You're right," I said quietly. "I don't belong here." My father's face fell, like he had expected me to give in, to save them. But why should I? They had pushed me aside when they had everything. Now that they had nothing, I was supposed to matter? I turned without another word, grabbed my bag from the basement, and walked to the door. My mother called my name, her voice weak, but I didn't stop. For once, I was making a choice for myself. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit me, but it felt different this time. It didn't feel harsh. It felt freeing. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing. I wasn't looking back. Because sometimes losing everything isn't the worst thing that can happen. Sometimes it's the beginning of something better.